Hello, good evening and welcome to this first Spanish revision session where we're going to be looking at the listening paper and specifically at some of those questions that will appear as crossover questions. For those of you who are wondering what are crossover questions are those that are common to foundation and higher paper. Typically, foundation paper, the crossover questions will be questions 3, 4, 7 and 8, and in the higher, crossover questions will be 1, 2, 5 and 6. Important to remember, especially if you're sitting the foundation paper, just before you're starting question 3, remember this one is one of the crossovers, so it's going to be trickier than questions 1 and 2. The answers may not be as obvious as they were in questions 1 and 2, and the same when you're sitting 4, 7 and 8. Okay, so bear that in mind, and you might want to at the beginning of the exam just circle those questions so that your senses are far sharper when you're listening, when you're doing these questions. Now let's start with some tips. General tips, and the few tips I'm going to give you have got to do with revision. Okay, what you need to be revising during these last few days, making sure that you're remembering, you're paying attention to these things. The first things, by the way, some of these things will be very obvious, and hopefully your teachers have told you about this. Hopefully you know by heart, brilliant. But just in case you don't, just in case you've forgotten, let me remind you. So the first thing you need to make sure that you do is pay attention. Okay, pay attention to non cognates. Okay, to non cognates. When you are revising vocabulary, it's very good to remember that, I don't know, pera is pear. Okay, brilliant. But if you don't know that pera is pear, chances are you're gonna work it out. Okay, if you can't remember, if you haven't revised it, you're probably going to work it out. Now, what happens if you haven't revised a word like ayuntamiento? Ayuntamiento, by the way, this is an all-time favorite of the exam board. Ayuntamiento, they can't get enough of this word, which is town hall or town council. Okay, town hall or council. We don't have two separate words for this. Other words like correos. Hopefully you're all screaming to you at your screen, that's post office. Yes, it is post office or postal service. But again, as you can see, not a cognate. If you haven't learned it, there's really no way you can work it out. If we're looking at the topic of food, for example, make sure you revise words like, zanahoria. Zanahoria, the Spanish for carrot. As you can see, it looks nothing like carrot. So if you're doing crossover questions or if you're doing higher paper, chances are they're going to choose a word like zanahoria before something a little bit more, a little bit more similar. Another good one is guisantes, peas. Okay, so make sure you're focusing on those words that don't look anything like the English. The other tip I would give you is revise general vocabulary. Okay, general vocabulary. I know that sometimes students make the mistake of revising topic vocabulary, and it's brilliant. Okay, do revise the topic vocabulary, of course. Okay, you want to make sure that you know all the vocabulary related to each topic, but there's no point knowing what the word for, I don't know, sports center is if you don't understand general words. Okay, so general verbs like ir, salir, escuchar. Okay, go through the specification list and look at the general vocabulary. Make sure you know that well. Other things could be adverbs. Okay. Adverbs, things like cerca, lejos. There are many adverbs. Delante. Okay, all the. So that would probably be more. Sorry, that would probably be more a preposition. Sorry. But okay, things adverbs. You could put prepositions in here as well. Anything that is not related to a particular topic, but it could appear at any point, any time. Other things could be, of course, adjectives. And when you're revising adjectives, I would really encourage you to go through as negatives, okay, as pairs. So, for example, you might want to revise caro and barato. Okay, caro, expensive, barato, cheap. you may want to revise bonito, beautiful, and feo, ugly. As much as you can, do learn your adjectives as pairs. Why? Because in the crossover questions, as in the higher questions, you won't, if something, if you may hear that something is expensive and the option in English is expensive, in Spanish you may not hear caro, you may hear no es barato. So you may hear the opposite to tell you, to give you the answer that you need. So that's why it's important that you revise them as pairs, okay? Now, the other thing that you also need to make sure that you revise is the basics. Okay, basics. What do I understand as basics? Numbers. Please make sure you know your numbers well. Things like months, things like days of the week, things like seasons. What do you call it? Compass points. Okay, north, west, east, south. Things like weather. Things like weather. Things like directions. These sort of things that sometimes we get so tangled into revising topic vocabulary that we forget about the most basic things, and then we know we're understanding something really, really well, and then the word 56 comes up, and we go, right, I can't remember what that was. 56. For those who may have forgotten, that's 56. But you need to make sure that your numbers are spot on. Times, that's the other one. Times, how to give the time. If you hear a las 3 menos cuarto, make sure that you can straight away, okay, that's 2:45, okay? So make sure you don't forget those basics for revision. Now, anything else? When you're revising these things, a useful thing to do is to, for example, do word umbrellas for revision. So for example, umbrellas. Okay, so for example, I might be revising pasatiempos, and then from pasatiempos I'm gonna go do deportes, and I'm going to do, I don't know, cine, and I'm going to do televisión, and from each of these categories, televisión, and from each of these categories I'm going to start putting some more vocabulary. So in deportes, I might do football. From football, I might write the word jugador, player. I might write the word botas, the football boots. I might write the word pelota, ball, or balón, another word for ball. Okay, so and get expanding and extending these word umbrellas or however you will, or mind maps as much as possible, and try and challenge yourself to come up with as much vocabulary as possible. Okay, so this regarding the what to revise, how to revise. Now, when we're doing the listening, let's have a look specifically when we are doing the listening. What do we need to be doing? What do we need to be bearing in mind? The very first thing I would like to encourage you to do is to use your time wisely. Okay? In the exam, use your time wisely. So you will have some time at the beginning. Okay, at the beginning of the exam, you will be giving a few minutes to go through the paper. Make sure you go through the paper. Make sure you're looking at what types of questions you've got. Make sure you're looking at what topics, and make sure you're starting to think of vocab. Okay, think of vocabulary that might come up. Then before each question, again, read the title. Read the question carefully. Okay, you may want to summarize the question so that when you're in the middle of the listening, you can very quickly remember what the question was about. Okay, and also think of vocabulary. We will do this together in a minute. when we're going through some examples, but yeah, just bear these in mind. And then at the end of the exam, after the last two beeps have finished, after the person on the recording has said, oh, this is the end of the exam, now you've got until the end of the exam to go through your questions. Make sure you go through your questions. Make sure you count the number of marks, make sure, or crosses that you've got. Make sure that you've got as many crosses as points there are. If it's a free writing question, make sure that you've written enough information for 1 mark, 2 marks, etc. And if there's anything blank, make sure that doesn't stay blank by the end of the exam. So if you really don't have a clue, if you really didn't understand, use your common sense. Okay? You do have a lot of common sense, even if you sometimes your teachers or your parents might not think so. You do have a lot of common sense. Use it, okay? And give an answer. What's the worst case? What's the worst that can happen? You may have the question wrong. You may get it wrong. That's fine. If you leave it blank, I can guarantee you 100% that that's not going to be the right answer. So just write something, okay? Another very obvious one, okay? Don't panic. Don't panic. To avoid panicking, of course, practice beforehand as much as possible. Okay, that helps. Make sure revising also helps, because if you feel more confident with your knowledge, that will make you not panic. Okay, so there are all these things. Make sure you've had a good breakfast. Make sure you breathe properly, etc. But at the same time, don't be too confident. Okay. Don't be too confident. Don't be cocky. Don't think, oh yeah, I've understood it straight away. I don't have to listen to it again. No, the recordings are played twice for a reason. Listen to it the first time, write your answer. But the second time, make sure you go through it again. Make sure you are checking that you didn't misunderstand something. Okay, so be careful with that as well, because that happens as well. Now, what other thing? The other thing that you really need to make sure that you do is pay attention to the beginning of each recording, so that if I hear, of course, as you know, you will first hear the title of the question, you will be given a few seconds to go through it, etc. And then you will start hearing the information, the recording. So remember, if you just hear example, this means that all you're going to hear is the example. Does this mean you need to switch off and not listen to it? No, do listen to it, because you will understand how the information is given, and look at, you might get some ideas from the example. Okay, so don't switch off. So if you hear example, you will just hear the example, obviously. If you hear, for example, question 4A or part A or part 1, this means that only the information in that question is going to be given. And if you just hear question 4, this means all the information is going to be given. Now, this is quite obvious. Again, some of you may be looking here, oh, I know all of this. However, again, every year, somebody or quite a few people make the mistake of, oh, I thought it was only the information for section A that I was being given. No, do pay attention. You might want to make yourself a little note of how much information is going to be given each time. Okay, so do not make mistakes with that. And the last thing I wanted to make you aware of is distractors. Okay, distractors, especially when it is when we're dealing with crossover questions, or when we're dealing with higher questions, we may hear words from all options. Okay, but we will be able to single the right question out more easily if we are very much in tune with things like negatives. What do I mean like negatives? Well, some of them are obvious, no, but there are others which, you may sometimes have forgotten. Ni, neither, or neither or. Tampoco, neither or either. Okay. Other words like nada, nothing, or in the construction no es nada, for example, no es nada barato, it's not cheap at all. So this means it's the same as saying es caro. Nadie, nobody. Nunca, never. Other words also like en absoluto, at all, or ningún, none, ningún o ninguna. And other words like excepto, except, or salvo, another way of saying except. So all these words can change completely, like you can see here, the meaning of the word that follows. So if you've got the option cheap, expensive, and I don't know, free, and you hear no es nada barato, oh, I've heard barato, so that's cheap. No, because you've just heard no and nada. Okay, so be careful with these negatives, which are distractors and which might push you into giving the wrong answer. Okay, as long as you do these things, you're going to do great. So we're going to start having a look at the first question, at the first type of question that we might come across as our crossover question. And it's this one. It's called, the first thing we need to do, as I said, is look at the title. It's lost property. So, what do we need to do here? So we're going to look at the title, lost property, and we are going to start reading the question. Marta is talking about what she has lost, and we need to put a cross in the correct box. Okay, pretty straightforward. Now, Marta has lost her rucksack, purse, or suitcase. We're going to hear that she's lost her purse. I might know what the word for purse is in Spanish, or I might wait. You know, if I don't, then I might try and work it out from the listening. I should know, really. And remember, the word for purse is monedero. Okay, monedero. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is look at the other questions. So I know that the item is bright red, light blue, or dark brown. So the first thing I'm going to do, so that I'm quicker when I'm doing the listening, is I'm going to, okay, so the item is, what do I need to, what are they asking for? They're asking for the color. Okay, so I'm going to write down here color, so that while I'm listening to the recording, I don't then have to read the question again and in order to remind myself that I'm after a color. I'll just write color. The next one, Marta lost the item this morning, last night, or yesterday afternoon. Okay, so I'm going to write something that like when, or when lost. Okay? She thinks she left it at the cinema, at the market, or on the bus. Okay, I might highlight or highlight or underline left it. Okay, or I might just write left, or where left. Where left. And then Marta is staying at a hotel, campsite, or youth hostel. Again, I might highlight or underline staying, or I might like staying. Okay, now these words are going to make me be quicker when I'm listening to listen to the right information. Now, after I've done this, which should take seconds, then I'm going to start. By the way, remember, this is the question has been announced, and these are the bit of time that I've got until the recording starts. Now, I'm going to start anticipating what I am going to hear. So the item is bright red, light blue, or dark brown. So I'm going to start going for the obvious things, which are the colors. So if it's red, I'll hear rojo. If it's blue, I'll hear azul. If it's brown, I'll hear marrón. Okay, and if I'm being extra good and I'm feeling especially inspired, I'll remember that rojo, bright red, will be rojo intenso. Light blue will be azul claro, and dark brown will be marrón oscuro. Now, this brings me to a little reminder. Please revise the colors, okay? Especially the most sort of obscure ones like amarillo, okay? Amarillo, and things like blanco, negro, etc. Okay? Now, next thing, Marta lost the item this morning. So I'll remember that this morning is esta mañana, esta mañana, last night, anoche, and yesterday afternoon, ayer por la tarde. Okay? Now, ayer por la tarde, I might also hear, rather than ayer por la tarde, I could hear ayer, I don't know, a las 3 de la... sí, a las 3. Or ayer después de comer, okay? So don't be too... don't think that they're going to, because these are crossover questions, don't think that you're going to hear exactly the translation of these expressions, okay? You might not. Now, mentioning these time phrases brings me to another reminder, which is revise time phrases. Super important, okay? Revise time phrases. Why? For things like this, general time phrases, but also because sometimes especially in the reading paper, there will be that question of, is this happening now? Did this happen in the past, or will this happen in the future? And the time phrases are going to give you the clue to the right answer. Another thing you must remember about time phrases is that there are some all-time favorites. Things like hoy, today, ayer, yesterday, and mañana, mañana, are quite popular. Okay, remember that mañana is the word for tomorrow, but if it appears as in la mañana, that's the morning. So mañana, tomorrow, la mañana, the morning. In addition to ayer, the exam board also seems to favor words like anteayer, they like that word, and also words like here, anoche, okay, anoche, last night. So be especially tuned in to these type of things. And of course, also revise other time phrases such as ahora, now, such as hace, 3 años, hace 3 años, 3 years ago. So remembering this hace is like the equivalent of the English ago. And also things like desde hace, for how long you've been doing something, or dentro de. So for example, dentro de una semana, in a week's time. Okay, literally means within 1 week, but it's in a week's time. So do revise all these time expressions. Okay, of course, you wouldn't need them for this specific question, but while you're doing revision, do revise them. The next thing we're going to do is look at this. She thinks he left it at the cinema, so we know that cinema is cine. At the market, so we know that it's mercado. And on the bus, we know that it's autobús. Okay, so handy to know these expressions. And then Marta is staying at a hotel, okay, hotel, campsite, camping, and youth hostel. Remember, albergue juvenil. Now, if I know anything about these exams, straight away, I would think, right, hotel is a cognate, camping is a cognate, albergue juvenil looks nothing like youth hostel. So even before I've listened to the recording, I have a little sneaky feeling that maybe this one has got higher chances of being the right answer than this one and this one. This doesn't mean, I'm not telling you this one is the right answer, I don't know, but I'm going to be especially attentive. I'm going to be paying a special attention to this one because this one is not the cognate. So in my eyes, and what tends to happen, it tends to have sort of more, it's a bit more likely that this is that this might be the answer, but not always. Okay, so having done this, which is what you would do in the seconds, in the bit of time that you've got, I know this has taken much longer than you will have, but hopefully, you won't be explaining it to anyone. You will be doing it to yourself and for yourself, so it's going to be quicker. Now we're going to listen to the recording, the recording for this question. Please do make a note of your answers while you're listening, and once the recording is finished, we will be back checking the answers with the transcript. Okay, I hope it goes well.
Question 4.
Buenas tardes. ¿En qué puedo servirle?
Hola, he perdido mi monedero.
¿De qué color es?
Es de piel marrón oscuro y fue un regalo especial.
¿Cuándo lo perdió?
Anoche, cuando estaba con mis amigos.
¿Nos puede dar más información, por favor?
Sé que lo tenía en el cine cuando pagué las entradas, pero creo que lo dejé en el autobús número 17. No estoy segura.
De momento no lo tenemos. ¿Cómo podemos ponernos en contacto con usted?
Estoy alojada en el albergue juvenil hasta la semana que viene.
Buenas tardes. ¿En qué puedo servirle?
Hola, he perdido mi monedero.
¿De qué color es?
Es de piel marrón oscuro y fue un regalo especial.
¿Cuándo lo perdió?
Anoche, cuando estaba con mis amigos.
¿Nos puede dar más información, por favor?
Sé que lo tenía en el cine cuando pagué las entradas, pero creo que lo dejé en el autobús número 17. No estoy segura.
De momento no lo tenemos. ¿Cómo podemos ponernos en contacto con usted?
Estoy alojada en el albergue juvenil hasta la semana que viene.
And we are back. I hope you found that listening pretty straightforward after all the sort of anticipation of vocabulary that we've done. So you may be thinking, well, yes, but when I'm doing the exam myself, I'm not going to have anyone telling me what the vocabulary that might appear is. Yes, you're completely right, and that's why it's really important that between now and the exam you're revising as much vocabulary as you possibly can and doing a lot of practice. So we're going to look at the answers with the help of the transcript. We've got it here. So we know the first question is already there, so we don't need to look at it. And we've got the word monedero. If you can see here, that's the word for purse. All right. So then the next thing we needed to find out was the color. Okay, so the item is what color it is. So if I look at the transcript, ¿de qué color es? Es de piel marrón oscuro. Marrón oscuro. And that's exactly what I would have anticipated, or one of the expressions that I would have anticipated when I was thinking of what the vocabulary might be. And another interesting expression here that, it's also with remembering this word piel. Piel is leather, okay? Es de piel, is made of leather. Okay, and then we read, y fue un regalo especial. It was a special present. The word regalo, important word that tends to come up quite a lot in exams as well. Don't forget it. Okay, we don't need the information that it was a special present or a special gift, but the word regalo worth remembering. Next one, Marta lost the item when. ¿Cuándo lo perdió? Anoche. Cuando estaba con mis amigos. So, anoche, last night. Here we go. And, as I said, this is one of the favorites. This is one of those words that tend to appear quite a lot, so worth remembering. The next thing that I'm going to be looking at is where she left it. ¿Nos puede dar más información? Can you give us more information? Sé que lo tenía en el cine. Cine. Now, be careful. Sé que lo tenía, continue listening. Okay, that's what I was saying. One of the things I was saying earlier. Don't be too cocky. Don't think, oh, I heard this. I got it. No. Sé que lo tenía en el cine cuando pagué las entradas. I know I had it at the cinema when I paid for the tickets. But, creo que, I think that, lo dejé, I left it, en el autobús número 17. No estoy segura. So, she thinks she left it where? At the cinema? No. She knows she had it at the cinema, but she thinks she left it on the bus. Okay? And then, de momento no lo tenemos. For the moment, we don't have it. ¿Cómo podemos ponernos en contacto con usted? How can we get in touch with you? Estoy alojada, remember this word, alojarse, to stay, en el albergue juvenil hasta la semana que viene. El albergue juvenil, the youth hostel. Okay. In this case, this theory, if there is one that's not a cognate, it's likely to be that one, has worked. But remember, it may not always work. But if in doubt, if you're not sure, if if you are stuck and you have not heard the right answer, maybe that's one strategy to go for. Okay, so hopefully you found this pretty straightforward. Hopefully with the transcript as well, you can see the answers more clearly. Do these yourselves as well. Okay, when you're practicing, don't just look at the answers, just the ABC. Look at the transcript and work out where do you get the answers, how do they express them. Okay, because then you will realize things like this, things like what traps they try and make you fall into. Okay, so this is it for our first question. I'm going to take a few seconds to change the canvas, and I'll be back with the next question we're going to be looking at. Okay, so back in a sec. And we are back with a new canvas and a new question. In this case, the question is called local museum, which in Spanish would be something like museo local. So this is the type of question where you are going to listen to three people, okay, Teresa, Javier, and Aurora, and each of these people are going to tell you something about an aspect of the museum, and you have to say which aspect each person is talking about. We know that Teresa is talking about the size of the museum, so no other person is going to talk about the size of the museum. All the things you're going to hear about is the cost, the guided tours, the number of things to do, and the shop. Okay, at this point it's worth, with a highlighter, doing exactly what I've just done. Highlight cost, guided, things to do, shop. Okay, so that very quickly your eyes go, right, this is what I need to listen for. All right. Now, again, with this being a crossover question, you might not hear the word, the specific word that would describe this in Spanish. So, for example, the cost in Spanish would be el coste. Okay, the guided tours would be las visitas guiadas. Okay, the things to do would be cosas que hacer, and the shop would be la tienda. Okay, so it's worth you doing exactly what I just did. Write the obvious, the obvious thing that you would hear, but then at the same time, while you're waiting for the recording to start thinking of, okay, what other words might we hear? All right, so let's have a look for coste. Okay, so for the cost, if someone is talking about the cost, what other things might they mention? They might mention words like caro, expensive, barato, cheap. They might hear things like you might hear words like las entradas, the cost, the tickets, entradas. You might hear things like el precio, the price. Okay. Or other things like cuesta demasiado. Cuesta demasiado. It costs too much. Okay. The guided tours, visitas guiadas. Other things you might hear would be you might hear things like guía, the word for guide. Okay. You might hear explanations. The number of things to do, other than las cosas que hacer, you might hear things like actividades. Actividades organizadas. organizadas. Some things that you may do in a museum are sometimes workshops, which in Spanish hay talleres. Okay, so try and think what activities happen in a museum, what things might I hear, which might not involve the word cosas, things. And then finally we've got la tienda, the shop. If I didn't hear la tienda, I might hear the verb vender, to sell, or venden, they sell. I might hear comprar. I might hear productos, or things like regalos. I might hear artículos, articles. Artículos. And again, I might hear words like caro or barato. Okay, words to do with the price of things. Okay, so having done this, which I hope you would do as well in your paper, we're going to listen to the recording, and hopefully you're going to also make your marks, and we'll see afterwards using the transcript whether you were right and whether we were right with our hypothesis for words or not. Back in a minute.
Question 7. Mi nombre es Teresa. Nuestro museo es un edificio de estilo contemporáneo y es enorme.
Me llamo Javier. Me alegro de que en el museo haya tantas actividades para los niños.
Soy Teresa. Los fines de semana trabajo en la tienda de recuerdos del museo.
Soy Javier. Se aprende mucho en las visitas guiadas.
Soy Aurora. Me inquieta que mucha gente no venga al museo porque las entradas son muy caras.
Mi nombre es Teresa. Nuestro museo es un edificio de estilo contemporáneo y es enorme.
Me llamo Javier. Me alegro de que en el museo haya tantas actividades para los niños.
Soy Teresa. Los fines de semana trabajo en la tienda de recuerdos del museo.
Soy Javier. Se aprende mucho en las visitas guiadas.
Soy Aurora. Me inquieta que mucha gente no venga al museo porque las entradas son muy caras.
So we are back. I hope that you found the recording good, you found the recording manageable and straightforward. Now we're going to look at the answers with the help of the transcript. So we've got here, first of all, we've got the example. Okay, so mi nombre es Teresa. Nuestro museo es un edificio de estilo contemporáneo, contemporary style, y es enorme. So enorme would be massive, enormous, and that's the size. You don't need this for the exam because obviously it's the example, but it always helps to have that reassurance of, yeah, that's good, I've understood the example. Okay, so the next person, me llamo Javier. So as soon as you hear Javier, okay, look for him, okay? Javier, we've got him here. Me alegro de que, this expression, me alegro de que, I am happy that, en el museo haya tantas actividades para los niños. Activities for children. So obviously, actividades is going to be number of things to do. And notice we thought here actividades. We might hear actividades rather than cosas que hacer. So we're going to cross number of things to do for Javier. Next one, soy Teresa. Los fines de semana trabajo en la tienda de recuerdos del museo. La tienda de recuerdos. So we've got straightforward, tienda, shop. And we've got the de recuerdos is souvenir shop. Okay, recuerdos is not a word that we had expected. Actually, it's a pretty obvious. We could have expected to hear recuerdos, but importantly, we've got the word tienda. So Teresa, who is here, the other thing she mentions is la tienda de recuerdos. So we're going to cross this one. Next one, soy Javier. So we've got Javier again. Se aprende mucho en las visitas guiadas. So we've got visitas guiadas, guided tours, not too complicated. Here we go. This is what that I'm doing, of doing an arrow whenever I hear the name. You might want to do the same, okay? Because sometimes what happens if you hear, okay, I got visitas guiadas, but now I've forgotten who was talking, okay? So I would say put the pen or, just get ready to, okay, Javier, visitas guiadas, and then do the cross, okay? And then finally, soy Aurora, here we go, Aurora, me inquieta, it worries me, okay? Interesting expression. Que mucha gente no venga al museo porque las entradas son muy caras. So this is clearly the most complicated of the extract, the most complicated of the pieces, okay? Why? Because they used an expression like me inquieta, which isn't something that many people won't have heard before, okay? Me inquieta, it worries me. And most importantly, this expression, me inquieta que, goes followed by present subjunctive, all right? So they are using a pretty complicated sentence, but the important thing is, even if this sentence is complicated, look at what they use here. Las entradas son muy caras. The tickets are very expensive. And look here, we thought about entradas and we thought about caro, okay? So it doesn't matter if I don't understand me inquieta, if I don't understand the present subjunctive of the verb venir. What's important is that I've understood las entradas son muy caras. Therefore, I know that Aurora, we need to cross it here, okay? So this goes to say that, yes, sometimes the vocabulary or the expressions will be complicated, but the reason why they put it there is because they're checking, they want to see if you can infer the meaning, okay? If despite a complicated sentence, you can still work out that they're talking about tickets, expensive, therefore it's the cost, okay? So don't get too worried because you don't understand everything. It does not matter. Focus on what you need to understand for the question, okay? So I hope this makes sense. I hope, I hope you feel a bit like, all right, okay, so yeah, I think I can do it, okay? But in order to do that, it's essential that you've revised all this vocabulary and that you can come up with something like this by yourselves, okay? Right, so just a tiny little break. Let me change the canvas and let's go for the next question. See you in a minute. So we continue with our crossover questions, and we've got here a new question which is about weekend activities. Really, really important always to read the title of the questions, okay? Start sort of making a mental list of what things I might hear about, okay? Titles of questions are essential, okay? So this question is about, basically they're asking us, what did these people do? So I've got Juan, I've got Gerardo, Merche, Ignacio, and I've got Rosario. So I'm going to hear these people telling us what they did, and these are the possible things that they did. Now, what I would advise in this type of question is that you do the following. You do it if you want, but to me, I think that would help me. Okay. Now, in this type of question, what's going to happen? Right. If I hear Gerardo, I'll hear something like, "Hola, soy Gerardo. El fin de semana." Da, 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 da. Okay. Once I've heard what he did, then I need to be looking on the list and be finding what I think I heard, then looking at the letter, let's say it's E, then going to E, and then going down E and making sure that I mark it on Gerardo and I don't mark it on Juan or on Merche. To me, this would be far too much to do. So in the seconds I've got, in the time I've got before the question, I would advise you to do the following. So I've got A is earned money. So earn money. B, learned a new skill. Learned new skill. You do this whether you do this if you want, but to me I think that would help me. Okay. C, I don't need C because it's the example, so I can pretty much get rid of it. Actually, don't do that, but you might want to just cross that one out because you're not going to need it. Walked in the mountains. Walked mountains. Went to a wedding. Wedding. And played musical instrument. Played music. Okay? So I've got it like this, and to me this would be a little bit easy, a little bit easier and a bit more straightforward to when it comes to doing the actual listening. Okay. Now the other thing I'm going to do is try and again foresee what type of vocabulary I might come across. So earn money. What may I hear? Okay, so earn money is ganar dinero. Ganar dinero. But I might also hear, let's think of other words related to earning money. So I might hear something about trabajo or trabajar. I might hear something about cobrar, to get paid, empleo, job. I might hear something about pagar, like, I don't know, I have to pay bills, tengo que pagar facturas, whatever, okay? So try and think, I might hear, I could hear something like una cafeteria, places where people might work, okay? So try and anticipate this sort of word. Learn a new skill, okay? So to learn is aprender. Aprender. A skill could be habilidad. I could also hear things like nuevo for new. I could hear things like, I don't know, think of what skills this person might have learned to do. Okay, I don't know, they might have learned to, I don't know, swim, nadar. They might have learned to, I don't think it will be play music because there is one that played a musical instrument, so then that would be confusing. May have learned to, I don't know, cook, cocinar. Okay, so try and think what other things, what skills that person may have learned. Walk in the mountains. Okay, so we know that to walk is caminar, but I've also got other words for to walk, which is, for example, pasear. Mountains is montaña. Montaña. And I've also got words like montañismo, like hiking. Okay, so I might hear any of this or others. Went to a wedding. I know that wedding is boda. We've also got in Spanish the word casamiento, but it's not as common. I could hear, what other thing? I might hear other words like celebración. And I might hear something like se casaron, someone got married. Okay, so it might not involve the word boda necessarily. And played a musical instrument. Okay, so I'm going to remember that to play, in the sense of to play an instrument, is tocar, is the verb to touch, not the verb to play. We've got instrumento for instrument. But also, let's try and think of what instruments I could hear. I could hear, I don't know, guitarra. I could hear piano, trompeta. I don't know, violin. Okay, try and anticipate instruments. Many instruments are cognates, but of course, get expecting how that might sound in Spanish. Okay, so we've done our sort of anticipation work. Now let's listen to the actual recording.
Example. Soy Juan. Cené con mi familia en un restaurante griego. Soy Juan. Cené con mi familia en un restaurante griego.
Question 7. Part 1.
Soy Gerardo. Trabajé de canguro porque quiero comprar un nuevo ordenador. Soy Gerardo. Trabajé de canguro porque quiero comprar un nuevo ordenador.
Question 7. Part 2.
Aquí Merche. Soy miembro de una orquesta y el sábado hubo un concierto. Aquí Merche. Soy miembro de una orquesta y el sábado hubo un concierto.
Question 7. Part 3.
Soy Ignacio. El domingo al mediodía fui a la boda de mi prima y su novio. Soy Ignacio. El domingo al mediodía fui a la boda de mi prima y su novio.
Question 7. Part 4.
Aquí, Rosario. Asistí a un curso de cocina en mi instituto y aprendí mucho. Aquí, Rosario. Asistí a un curso de cocina en mi instituto y aprendí mucho.
Okay, so we are back and we've got here the transcript. Let's see if your answers were right and if the things that we anticipated were right as well. So we've got, if we look at the example, we've got soy Juan, cené con mi familia en un restaurante griego. So this is the went to a restaurant. So here in this case we've got a pretty obvious answer as the example. Gerardo says, soy Gerardo, trabajé de canguro porque quiero comprar un nuevo ordenador. So we've got here trabajé, which is word we mentioned trabajo or trabajar. So that would have that hopefully helped. And also remember I said, oh, think of some jobs, and I came up with cafeteria. Right, the cafeteria didn't come up, but it came up, the word canguro came up, which is babysitter. Okay, babysitter. Literally, it's kangaroo, but this is canguro. So again, notice if you just thought of ganar dinero, of course you probably wouldn't get this. Now, trying to go a little bit further, trying to think of all the words that might be used to say the same, that will help you. So Gerardo. In that case, we would go earn money and we would do the cross here. Now, Merche, what does Merche says? Aquí Merche, soy miembro de una orquesta y el sábado hubo un concierto. So, we've got orchestra and we've got concert. So obviously, if we've got the word orchestra and concert, this is about playing instruments. So it's going to be F. As you can see, in that case, we didn't really anticipate anything about an orchestra or concert. We were thinking tocar un instrumento, and we were thinking of different musical instruments. Hopefully with orquesta and concierto being cognates, we would still be all right, okay? Next one down is Ignacio. El domingo al mediodía fui a la boda de mi prima y su novio. So we've got this one, a pretty straightforward one. Boda, wedding, no problems there. It's Ignacio. And then we've got aquí Rosario. Asistí a un curso de cocina en mi instituto y aprendí mucho. Un curso de cocina, a cooking course. Okay, so obviously if someone did a cooking course, what did they do? They learned a new skill. And remember, we looked at words like aprender, habilidad. I mentioned the word cocina. Why? Because I knew what was coming up? No, not really. I did not remember at all. But when you think of new skills, okay, what sort of skills might someone have learned? And cooking is, it's a pretty typical one, when it comes to, I learned a new skill, okay, especially in GCSE exams. All right, so try and anticipate those answers, okay? Try and anticipate what you are going to hear. And if nothing else, it helps you it helps you sort of wake up that vocabulary that you've got about that topic in your brain, and then everything contributes to you making sure that you understand even better. Okay, so let me go for another change of canvas. I'll be straight back with our with another question. All right, see you in a minute. So let's have a look at the last of our crossover questions that we're going to have a look at today. And this is what I think can be one of the trickiest type of question. In this question, this is a 4-mark question, and what you need to do in this question, you're going to hear some people talking, and you have to put a cross in the 4 correct boxes. So you've got 8 options, 8 possible correct sentences, but only 4 of these are correct. And remember, they're 4 without counting the examples. So they're expecting you to do your own 4 crosses. And what's the situation? The situation is something that's happening at the restaurant. Okay, so important, look at the title and get anticipating what you're going to hear. So Alberto is talking to the waiter. All right, now if we look at the at what's happening, we will start having an idea of how the conversation is going to go. Okay, so we know that Alberto wants a table for 2. Right, fine, brilliant. Now, possible things that are happening. Alberto orders mushroom soup. Okay, so let's try and think. Mushroom soup, we've got that soup is sopa, and mushroom in Spanish, it can be setas in general, or most typically in the GCSE, so in the GCSE specification, they use champiñones, okay, a specific type of mushroom. So that's what I might hear about. Now, he orders mushroom soup. Now, the fact that I hear mushroom soup, though, okay, this is one thing you need to bear in mind for all of these. I would say be careful with negatives, okay? Be careful with negatives, or with things that are mentioned, but they're not, they're not mentioned as it says here. So, for example, you be careful because you might hear sopa de setas or sopa de champiñones, but not as yo quiero sopa de champiñones, I want mushroom soup, but as no me gusta la sopa de champiñones. Or el otro día comí sopa de champiñones. I ate the other day mushroom soup. Okay, so be careful with things being mentioned, but not being what is actually there on the sentence. Okay, Alberto's friend does not like fish. Okay, so fish, important that we know that fish is pescado. And, okay, we might hear no le gusta, okay, no le gusta, odia, no quiere. We might hear some type of fish. We might hear things like I don't know, sardinas, salmón. Okay, so be careful, not just expect pescado, but some other things. Alberto has roast pork. Okay, roast pork. So let's remember, pork is cerdo and roast is asado. Okay, cerdo asado. We might also hear other things. Could we hear chuletas de cerdo asadas? Anticipate, be prepared to hear other things. Alberto has beer with his meal, so cerveza. Let's make sure we remember this word, cerveza. But of course, have your ears peeled for any other types of drinks, okay? Things like agua. Remember, we could hear agua mineral, con gas, sparkling, or sin gas, still. Okay, we might hear other things like limonada. We might hear vino, wine. Okay, so other possible things that we might hear. Alberto thinks the restaurant is noisy. The restaurant is noisy, ruidoso. But you might also hear things like hay mucho o demasiado ruido. Now, if he doesn't say it's noisy, he might make a comment on the atmosphere, but maybe it's the opposite. Maybe he says es tranquila, it's quiet. Okay, in which case we wouldn't cross this. Or he might not say es muy ruidoso, but he might say things like I don't know. La gente habla muy alto. People are talking very loudly. Okay, again, ways of going around what they actually mean. Okay, this is crossover question. It might not always be obvious. Alberto needs a spoon. Okay, so spoon, let's remember, spoon, cuchara. But while we're at it, let's revise other items of the cutlery. Cuchillo, knife. Cuchara, cuchillo. Now I've done a blank. I need the fork. Tenedor. Now we go. Tenedor. Oh my God, what's happened to my head? Okay, but we might hear other things like plato, plate. Other things like, I don't know, sal, salt, pimienta, pepper. Okay, so try and think what other things might he need that he might mention, but it's not cuchara. Alberto finds the food expensive. So, of course, expensive will be caro or cara, but we also might hear barato. He might say, no es nada barato, it's not cheap at all. Or está bien de precio, it's a good price, in which case we wouldn't cross this. Or no está bien de precio, okay? Other expressions to talk about price. Alberto pays cash for his meal. So let's remember the Spanish expression for cash is efectivo or en efectivo. Okay, but you might also hear things like tarjeta, card. Okay, you might hear, voy a pagar con tarjeta, or puedo pagar con tarjeta. Okay, so again, be open to possible expressions. Tarjeta, another thing fewer people pay by check, but you might find it. Okay, so this is our anticipation work. Let's now listen to the recording. Let's remember, you will listen to these people talking. 4 of these statements are correct. You need to cross the 4 correct statements. Okay, after the recording, we are back looking at the transcript. Okay, good luck with this.
Question 7.
Buenas tardes, señores. ¿Quieren el menú turístico?
Sí, gracias. Una mesa para 2, por favor.
¿Qué les gustaría tomar de primero?
Para mí, la sopa de champiñones y para mi amigo, guisantes con jamón.
¿Y de segundo?
cerdo asado para mí y para mi amigo pescado frito.
Vale. ¿Y para beber?
2 cervezas muy frías.
¿Algo más?
Sí, me hace falta una cuchara. ¿Aceptan tarjetas de crédito?
Por supuesto. Buenas tardes, señores. ¿Quieren el menú turístico?
Sí, gracias. Una mesa para 2, por favor.
¿Qué les gustaría tomar de primero?
Para mí, la sopa de champiñones y para mi amigo, guisantes con jamón.
¿Y de segundo?
Cerdo asado para mí y para mi amigo, pescado frito.
Vale. ¿Y para beber?
2 cervezas muy frías.
¿Algo más?
Sí, me hace falta una cuchara. ¿Aceptan tarjetas de crédito?
Por supuesto.
Okay, so we are back, and one important thing I forgot to say is that generally speaking, the information in this type of question is going to be in order, okay? It will appear in order. So generally, and please don't quote me, it could be that, that they change it, but generally speaking, especially in crossover questions, they will be, it will appear, so I don't know, they might mention this first, they might then mention this, then this, then this, okay? So generally speaking, the information will appear as it is in order, okay? They won't, first, this won't happen first, and then this, okay? Generally speaking. Okay, so we've got the transcript here. Let's have a look at it. So, buenas tardes, señores. Good afternoon, sirs. ¿Quieren el menú turístico? Do you want the tourist menu? This has got no relevance for our question. Sí, gracias. Una mesa para 2, por favor. Una mesa para 2. And this is the example. He wants a table for 2. We've got it here. ¿Qué les gustaría tomar de primero? Remember, de primero as a first course or as a starter. Para mí, la sopa de champiñones. So we've got it here, la sopa de champiñones. And also, notice, para mí. It's Alberto speaking. Para mí, for me. Be careful with this because it could have been para él. And in this case, Alberto orders mushroom soup. That would not be correct because he's not ordering it for himself, but for the other person, okay? But in this case, he orders the mushroom soup. That's correct. Y para mi amigo, guisantes con jamón. Guisantes con jamón. These guisantes, which are peas, this is another one of those words that EDEXCEL seems to love because it's not a cognate. It seems to be a very interesting vegetable. So guisantes con jamón, peas with ham. Okay, so we've got nothing about peas with ham here, so we don't need this information. Y de segundo, as a main course, cerdo asado para mí. So notice here, roast pork. We got it spot on, cerdo asado. Let's cross it. Y para mi amigo, pescado frito. Okay, so fried fish. So we hear the fish here. Now, Alberto's friend does not like fish. No, that's not right, okay? There's nothing about him not liking fish. Okay, vale. Y para beber, to drink, 2 cervezas muy frías, 2 very cold beers. So, does Alberto have beer with his meal? Yes, not just Alberto, the friend as well, but nevertheless, Alberto does too. ¿Algo más? Sí, me hace falta una cuchara. Me hace falta, I need. This is a way of saying I need. Me hace falta. Cuchara, spoon. That we got it here. He needs a spoon, so that's right. So here we've got our 4. Now, once you've got the 4 crosses, don't stop listening because it could be that actually you carry on listening and you notice that there's something else where you would also do a cross. This means that somewhere earlier on you've made a mistake. So don't stop listening when you've got the 4 crosses. ¿Aceptan tarjetas de crédito? Por supuesto. Do you accept credit cards? Of course. So we can work out, we can deduce that Alberto is going to pay card, so he's not going to pay cash. So we're not going to cross this, okay? Alberto finds the food expensive. There's nothing about that. and he thinks the restaurant is noisy, there's nothing about that either. Okay, so notice here, if you go through it and you sort of try and work out what you will hear, very often you will get it right. Very often you will find doing the listening very, very straightforward. Okay, so we'll leave it here for today. I hope this has been useful. Please do and go on to revise any words, any topics. If I don't know, if you've seen roast pork and I've said cerdo asado and you've got cerdo, I couldn't remember that. Please revise any single little topic or big topic that you couldn't come up with vocabulary for, okay? Because as you can see, if you think of the vocabulary beforehand, you will do well. If you can't think of the vocabulary beforehand, you will find it much, much more difficult, okay? So you still got a bit of time. Please go and please do give it a last big push and you'll be great, all right? I'll see you soon. Have a good evening.